This is an interesting series. If you were with us last week, we just started, and to be honest, like the first 18 verses of Judges 1 is just marvelous. I mean, you're just meant to remember God's goodness, God's faithfulness to his people. Like those 18 verses is just a reminder that God is alive and well and God is faithful. He always keeps his promise. So if you were with us last week, so I'm going to give you a quick, for those of you who are maybe our guests or missed last week for Memorial Day with family and golf and whatever you were, like here's a quick flyby of what we've seen. I do actually encourage you, go back, download, and listen to the first message because it sets the scene and the tone for where we're going really the rest of this book. And so in chapter 1, or the first 18 verses, remember, look what everything fell before them. I mean, you see this king, this really wicked king that did torturous things to other people, like Adonai-Bezek, he falls. And you look at these cities that have giants and mighty warriors, Kiriath Arba, it falls. You look at Kirioth Sefer, this city that has this elevation of the knowledge of the Canaanite gods, it falls. You look at Zapheth. Like it's a city where they had previously, it's a city where they were defeated. It's a city of brokenness. It's a city really of shame. And like you look at the past and like, man, that's brokenness, that's shame. That's just, it's deadly. It's destruction. And it becomes the city of God's grace and God's might. All falls. Why did God turn it all the way around? You know why? Because God is faithful to his people. And his promises still continue. And so it doesn't matter like that Joshua, their great leader, he's no longer with them. God is still alive and well. It doesn't matter that Moses is no longer with them. God is still alive and well. It doesn't matter if Joseph and Jacob and Isaac and Abram are with him. Like God is still alive. And his promises are still true. And so we're meant to just remember God is so faithful to his people. When you look to him, and when you trust him, right, those first 18 verses says there is victory. Like there's life. There is reward. There's unexpected delights. You can get the upper and lower springs. And so, but it doesn't mean that there's not without challenges. I mean, you just look at those 18 verses and all the things that they were encountering. A lot of challenges. And one of the biggest things that I think we can lose as someone reads Joshua and then goes in the book of Judges, one of the biggest differences is that all of a sudden now God is still asking them to remove the evil ones, like to remove the Canaanites. But what's different is that no longer are they fighting as a collective and corporate army. They're actually fighting as like individual tribes and families and individuals. Like that's a big shift. Right? It's a whole lot easier when there's like a corporate battle going on, but all of a sudden, now I got to fight this kind of like by myself with my family. That's hard. That's challenging. Let's just be honest, that's scary. Hey, can you imagine? I mean, many of you're in a small group. Like I'm in a small group. Love my small group. I don't want to look around to see all my small group members, but I love my small groups. But here's what I would say about my small group. If we're going into a UFC fight together, I don't know if I want my small group. Love them. All right, if you're asking us to, like, we have someone that can sing lullabies, like he'll sing you to sleep. Like Ryan can sing his heart out. He's in my small group. We got people in our small group, man, they're great with numbers. They can count beans. Right? There's only like one person in my small group that I'd be like, yep, I want to be with him. And he's just a little guy. He's like probably 130. His name's Brendan Baker. He'll wrap you in a pretzel, right? He is a powerful little guy. Other than that, sorry, I'll take somebody else's small group. All right, I want a small group with like Craig Coder with like military experience. That's the kind of small group I want. I want a small group with, I see Pat Mishler over there. I want someone with like strong and mighty. I see Dustin Roskop right there. He's huge. Like somebody check their DNA, like their ancestry DNA. Like I think they have sons of Anak in their like offspring background. Like I want warriors. And so here, I mean, like you imagine, like they're called now to fight and go to battle, tribe by tribe, family by family. All right, that's scary. And God says, you know what? It's not about your muscle. I am the only muscle you need. You look to me, and I promise you, I'm faithful. I'm with you. And that's what he has shown us. Right? Those first 18 verses are just reminding every generation, God's got you. He's got you. To the one who will lay down his life, there is victory and life, and there is reward, and there is unexpected delights. But now we're not done with chapter 1. Like the rest of chapter 1 and going into all the way to chapter 2, this shows us, these are some sobering verses, because these verses are going to show us, do you want to know how a civilization crumbles? This is how. You want to see how a country and a civilization and a nation implodes? All right? Well, you're going to see it in these verses. In fact, what God repeatedly told his people, even before this generation, in fact, the generation before them, God warned them. He says, the land that you're going into is inhabited by some very unpleasant, wicked people, and you have to deal with them. And this is a unique occurrence. We read Joshua and Judges, and I'll just be honest, it makes us feel really, really uncomfortable. And so it is a unique occurrence where God is saying you need to eliminate them. You only see it in this part of Scripture. But there is a reason. This is not an act of imperialism. It's not. It is actually a unique act of God's divine judgment. Justice has fallen. Judgment has come. And so, but God warned them. Even Moses has been dead and gone for decades now. But he said the same thing to Moses, just so that we're all on the same page. In Numbers chapter 33, this is what God said to Moses. As they're redeemed from Egypt and they're heading towards the promised land, he says this. He says, but if you do not drive out the inhabitants of the land before you, then those of them whom you let remain, they're going to be something to you. They're going to be barbs in your eye. They're going to be thorns in your side, and they shall trouble you in the land that you dwell. It's not going to be good for you. And so that's what he said to Moses. Even Joshua, he says the exact same words. In Joshua in 23:13, it says, God says, these people, you got to drive them out because they're going to be a snare to you. Whip in your sides, thorns in your eyes. If you're in the book of Judges already, if you just kind of flick your finger on your phone or on your hardback Bible, just go over to chapter 2. And in chapter 2, verse 3, it tells us, and it reminds us yet again, it's like God over and over says this. He says, they, meaning these inhabitants in the land, they will become thorns in your side, and their gods will be a snare to you. You must deal with these people because they are wicked and they will corrupt you. And this is where it's like, we honestly, us now reading this now, actually millennia later, we don't know all the background, but we do. These people that were dwelling in the land, they were not just the sexual immorality was not just rampant. But there was bestiality, there was gang rape, there was child sacrifice, and so much more. That's why last week I said, this is not a PG rated series. And so there's all types of things that we're going to see. But evil, error, and immorality is rampant. God is bringing judgment. And that's where we pick up. We pick up in verse 19. We have seen this far. Has God been faithful? Yes, he is faithful. He keeps his promises. And now in verse 19, it says, and the Lord was with Judah, and he took possession of the hill country, but he could not drive out the inhabitants of the plain because they had chariots of iron. Now, if you were with us last week, remember, so they're going tribe by tribe now. They're not fighting corporately. They're now fighting these battles tribe by tribe, family by family, individuals by individuals. And so it's like Judah was the one, Judah is the natural leader of the group. They were leading the way. They are the one that really the whole country is looking to, and they start off so well, but they are not finishing well here. Judah does not finish what they started. It says they could not drive out the inhabitants of the plain, which should cause us to ask, why couldn't they drive them out? Is it because God's power has run out? Is God's power now just on empty? It's just too many battles, and now God's not strong enough. That is not the case. Right? Is it because God now all of a sudden has changed? No. God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And so God is not changed. God has been nothing but faithful. But all of a sudden there is a change, and it's not God. Who is it? It's with Judah. They are no longer leading the way. They don't finish what they start. They're fearful. And they're not completely faithless, but their faith is wavering because there's reticence, there's a hesitation to actually go into battle. Why is there hesitation? It tells us at the very end of the verse of 19. Why was there reticence? Why was there hesitation? Because they had chariots of iron. Right? They saw a power in the enemy that was bigger than that they've ever seen. And so maybe the generation before them maybe they saw the chariots of the Egyptian, but this generation, they probably didn't see chariots of iron. And so they're countering now an enemy that they have never seen, and they're like, this too big for us. Did they have the faith to take down giants? They did. Do they trust that God is going to take down the chariots of iron? No. And so you look at these Canaanites, they had skill with working with metal. And so their morality might be down, but their use of technology is up. And so they're technologically advanced, but morally, they are down. And so Israel has been called now, how do we face this weapon? It's like they're all shook up. It's like they don't actually believe that they can stand before these Canaanites. And yet, has God been faithful? Yes, he has. He's been faithful. And so honestly, I don't know about you. It's like I can read some of these Old Testament narratives, and I see it's like you can read things like this and say, how is that possible? How did they not trust? They saw God provide over and over and over with miracles, signs, and wonders, and it's like, and all of a sudden they get here, and it's like they don't believe. And the reality is how true is that of us as well? We see God's faithfulness and goodness and his provision over and over and over, but then sometimes when we're faced with new situations and new challenges, guess what? We can see the challenges that you're experiencing right now. I can almost bet. Some of you in this room, I know you're experiencing challenges and hardships and difficulties. And God's been faithful in the past. And yet you can still feel like this challenge just seems impossible to me. And this challenge feels and seems unbearable. And fear and other things, it can cause us to say, you know what, I just don't know if you're going to come through, God. And it causes us to we're tempted to cut and run and not believe. And so don't do that. Don't you dare cut and run, no matter what the challenges are. They might be unique and they might feel unbearable and they might feel impossible. But God's saying, I promise you, I am faithful. I am with you. It's like, be like this guy that we're going to see in verse 20. Be like him. Verse 20. And Hebron was given to Caleb. As Moses, he said, and he drove out from it 3 sons of Anak. Caleb enters the picture again. Remember Caleb? Caleb is the old guy of the country. He's literally the oldest guy in the nation. There's only 2 individuals that go into the promised land from the other generation. All the other generation died in the wilderness because of the unbelief. Remember? God says only 2 people. Moses doesn't even go into the promised land. Joshua goes in, Caleb goes in. And Joshua, he's already dead. So Caleb is the last old guy, the last gray hair, if he had hair, right? He is going in. And what I love about this, does he back off? He doesn't back off. This old man is still trusting in God's goodness and faithfulness. Love it. I love it. He remains faithful and faith-filled, even at his old age. And so, to which I just look out, and not just in this service, looking out even to the last service, I am so thankful for the gray hairs in this room. The faithful older men, the faithful older women that they just continue to be faith-filled and fearless. Saying, you know what? We're going to trust God. God has been nothing but faithful. And that we would continue to have Caleb's. Right? People that stay engaged. He didn't check out. He could have just checked out. He didn't check out. And so he's engaged and he is strong. And you look at the youngers, verse 21. Look at what happens in verse 21. It says, but the people of Benjamin did not drive out the Jebusites who lived in Jerusalem. So the Jebusites had lived with the people of Benjamin in Jerusalem to this day. And so these Benjamites, they're not like Caleb. Caleb doesn't back off. Caleb stays engaged. He is faith-filled. He believes. Benjamin backs off. Right? Why do you think that happened? Why do you think Benjamin backs off and does not drive out the Jebusites? It doesn't tell us, but I don't think this is a mystery. My guess is that if Benjamin is looking at if Judah isn't going to drive out the Canaanites, if they're stopping because they're fearful, if the nation's leader isn't actually going ahead and he's not pursuing, it's this is too much for us, there's no way that we're going to be able to do that. Because remember last week, what do we see about the Benjamites? They're the tiniest tribe. Simeon is the weakest tribe in Israel. They're the ones that actually reside within Judah. Their allotment that God gave them was right in Judah. And so those that are in Judah have strength and provision. It's great. It's a great picture of Jesus. But if you remember, the tribe of Benjamin is right above Judah, right? They lean on the shoulders, they rest on the shoulders of Judah. And I can imagine if they're like, man, if Judah can't go, there ain't no way we're going to go. And so here we have this young tribe, this small tribe. What do? They compromise too. They compromise. In fact, I just wrote down, the young and the weak are watching. Isn't that true? They're always watching. And so I just think of us as leaders, and some of you are leaders here. It's that we want to lead in such a way we're not trusting in our own power and our own strength, but we're just leading the way like a Caleb and saying, oh God, you are the one who is able to do abundantly more than what we ask, dream, or imagine, and that you will bring victory. You're with us, you're faithful. And yet if we are leaders and we back down and we shrink when hardships and enemies come that we've never seen before, I tell you, the younger are watching and they will follow suit. And so they follow suit right here. They back down, they compromise, they run. Now in verse 22 to 26, there's some encouraging little verses right here, just real quick. There's a small remnant that God is using and showing us. There's a small remnant that are still trusting in God's goodness and faithfulness. Verse 22, the house of Joseph also went up against Bethel. And the Lord God was with them, and the house of Joseph scouted out Bethel. And in verse 24, and the spies saw a man coming out of the city, and they said to him, please show us the way into the city, and we will deal kindly with you. And so here we see, as they're like, we're going to still move forward. We're going to still do what God has called us to do. We're going to remove evil and error. And even though they had how are we going to do this? God, you're going to have to provide a way when there is no way. You're going to have to provide a door when there is no door. You're going to have to provide a person And that's what he did. It's almost like, just like Rahab of old, there is someone that says, you know what? I'll help you out. I'll help you. So, now, did this guy, well, we see the help, verse 25. Let's just look. It says, and he showed them into the city. They struck the city with the edge of the sword, but they let the man and his family go. Why? Did they kill this guy after his help? No, they did not. Why? Because he showed kindness. He aligned himself with the people of God, just like Rahab of old. Right? Just like the Abrahamic covenant said, right? Those who bless you, you bless. Those who curse you, you curse. And so they just continued on with the Abrahamic covenant. And they continue on saying, you know what? God, even when there doesn't seem to be a way or person, like God always provides. You just keep trusting. Now, in verses 27 on, like for you note takers, right, you're going to see a reoccurring phrase over and over and over again. And let's see it. Starting in verse 27, look what it says. Manasseh did not drive out the inhabitants, for the Canaanites persisted in dwelling in that land. Verse 28, when Israel grew strong, they put the Canaanites to forced labor, but did not drive out completely. Verse 29, and Ephraim did not drive out the Canaanites who lived in Gezer. You see in a recurring phrase? Right? In verse 30, Zebulun did not drive out the inhabitants of Kitron. Right? So that the Canaanites lived among them, but became subject to forced labor. Now, you look at verse 30, like this is, what an interesting little verse here. Because now it's like in verse 30, you see for the second time something new, something different. Is that they didn't drive out, like at the very beginning, it looks like in like verse 19, they didn't drive out, Judah didn't drive out the inhabitants because they had chariots of iron. They didn't drive out these people because of fear. This is different. All of a sudden now they're not driving out certain people because why? Because they had a better idea. They had a better plan. God, you want us to do this, but we actually think, God, we're going to help you out. We have a better idea of what we could do. And what do they want to do? They want to make these individual forced labor. Right? They decided, like, you're going to work for us. Right? Would that be beneficial to Israel? Would it be beneficial? Be careful. It would help them economically, right? But did God ask them to figure out how they could survive in the land economically? Is that what he wanted? No, that's not what he asked for. God didn't say, hey, when you go into the land, it's like figure out how you can like be more efficient with your labor. It's not what he said. And so do you think God is pleased with this? No. And the reason we know that he's not pleased is like God was the one who heard their cries when they were being enslaved under Egypt. And now they're going to actually, he's like, and now you're going to turn around and enslave others? And so why did they do this? It's the theme of the book. They did what was right in their own eyes. They're going to determine, and they're going to decide what's right. And so, the people right here, they compromised. Yet again, they compromised in the first part of like in 119 because of fear, and now they're going to compromise God's word and God's ways because of something else. Really, I would say financial gain. They're going to compromise because they want to advance their careers. And so I read like texts like this, and it's so easy just to kind of fly by it and to say, is something like this actually still relevant for us today? Yeah. We can compromise because of fear, but oftentimes we'll compromise for our own financial gain, to advance our own careers. And then I think about like how many of us, if we're sitting right here, this is a good self-reflection question. How many of you started so well? Like if you look back to maybe yesteryear, look back maybe to your college days or younger years where you just saw like God's goodness and faithfulness, and you started so well. And then all of a sudden, a little time goes by and it's like all of a sudden, your career or your financial gain becomes a little bit more important than trusting in the goodness and the faithfulness of God. And so, it's still relevant. And so in verse 31, it's not just Zebulun and the other tribes we saw. In verse 31, 32, Asher. Asher did not drive out the inhabitants of Haugh. Verse 32, so the Asherites lived among the Canaanites and the inhabitants of the land, for they did not drive them out. Things get tough, they back off. 33, Naphtali did not drive out the inhabitants of Beth Shemesh or the inhabitants of Beth Anath. And what did they do? And they became subject to forced labor. Verse 35, this one's an interesting one. The Amorites, they persisted in the land. They persisted in dwelling in Mount Heres. But the hand of Joseph rested heavily on them, and they became subject to forced labor. Now here in verse 35, it's just like, you can almost contrast this. It talks about the house of Joseph. If you go back to verse 22, the house of Joseph were the faithful remnant. Like God was showing his blessing. They started off so well. And now here, just a few verses later, right? They don't finish well. They too compromise. Right? And so you see like compromise over again. We see the first 18 verses, God is faithful. His promises continue. He is alive and well. He's with his people. But in verses 19 to 35, man, you just see God's faithful, but his people, they aren't. They aren't faithful. And they just continue to compromise. And I wonder, what's really kind of scary is that there's a part of me that wonders, did they even understand and know that they were compromising? Maybe some of the things they were doing was so small in their eyes, there's this shift like, well, we're not really doing anything that bad. It's a little tiny. Like, we don't need to kill them. We can just actually now use them, right? And they'll be an advantage to us. We don't need to kill the people. Let's just have them be forced labor for us. It's like, and oftentimes if we're honest, sometimes when we compromise, it works. In fact, what's even scarier is not only does it work, there's no immediate pain. And so God's hand must be upon this. Right? And you just see compromise over and over again. So here's a little list. I was just so we're all on the same page. What were some of the compromises that we see? I mean, this is not an exhaustive list, but I do think I think you can get it from the text. The reasons are varied. Like some of the compromise, why? Some of the compromise is just fear. They're scared, rightly so. They're experiencing new challenges and an enemy they've never seen before. And so they're scared. God, are you faithful? You going to provide? And so they're not trusting God. So they're going to compromise and not finish what God has started. And so here's where I say this. I feel like someone probably needs to hear this. In what ways today can you compromise because of fear? In what ways? And I'm just thinking right now, how about relationships? Can you compromise in relationships because you're scared? Yeah. I'm just thinking maybe partners or maybe even friendships, but I'm just thinking more of like I can imagine, especially students in the room, younger people in the room, like where it's like you look around and you're like, oh, all my friends have someone. All my friends have a relationship. All my friends have someone that they love and they're in this relationship, and yet I don't. And can you now begin to compromise? Be like, God, do you have anybody for me? Anybody? And to be honest, it's like, I don't believe it. And then all of a sudden, fear can start to sink in. And so what's the tendency? Well, I'll just take matters into my own hands. And I'll compromise, and then I'll start actually pursuing this person, knowing full well, is that going to be a benefit and a blessing to you? No. Likely not. So, we can compromise out of fear so easily. Relationships, friendship, money, families. So they compromise out of fear. What about this one? Some compromise because of other priorities. They're going to compromise because, hey, I'm going to advance my financial gain. Everybody else is doing it. Like, look at what they're doing. And so if they're doing it, and look how they're reaping the fruit of that. I'll just compromise and do the same thing. Prioritize my career. How about this? Some compromise, maybe some compromise because of deception. They actually don't think, it's like, these people, they're wicked. I am not going to adopt what they're doing. They're not going to influence me. And so they're just like deceived by I'm fine. I'm good. Right? And so they make small compromises, but they don't think it's not going to affect me. Little do they know, it might not actually impact you, but it might impact people around you. And so, another one, this one is, I don't think it's stretching it. I don't see it in the text, but I often wonder, maybe they compromised because they're tired of fighting. Can that be possible? Man, they're just fatigued. All you see in Joshua is in Joshua, there's 31 battles. I can just imagine, I'm just tired of fighting. And so they might just say, you know what, we're just not going to fight anymore. Just let them be. I'll be okay. I'll be fine. And so, man, there's just so much here. But it is a call, how are you doing? Are you fearless and faith-filled that when challenges come your way, you're like, oh, I know this is hard, but I'm trusting God is faithful. Or when challenges come around, we have challenges every single day. We do. Some are smaller, some are huge. Some are emotional, relational, financial, and everything in between. Physical. And it's I'm scared. Are you scared? Are you prioritizing things? Are you deceived? Are you tired? So we just look at it. And so God responds, though, because they did compromise. They don't finish what they started. And God's going to respond to their compromise. And how do you think God's going to react? Well, you don't have to wonder. Let's just look at verse 1 of chapter 2. God rebukes them. He says, you know what? He's going to confront them and say, what you did is not good. Right? The fact that you're fearing this, not me, or you're prioritizing this, not me, that you think that's not going to impact you. Right? You are off. And so, chapter 2, verse 1, look what we have. Now the angel of the Lord, the angel of Jehovah, went up from Gilgal to Bochim. And he said, I brought you up from Egypt and brought you into the land that I swore to give to your fathers. And I said, I will never break my covenant with you. And you shall make no covenant with the inhabitants of this land. You shall break down their altars, but you have not obeyed my voice. Why? What is this that you have done? And so there is a strong rebuke here. Now, who brings this rebuke? This is what's interesting about 2:1, right? This rebuke, it doesn't come from a prophet. It's not coming from a prophet. It's not coming from Caleb, the old faithful, fearless one. Like you would think, maybe Caleb stands up. Nope. It's not coming from a prophet. It's not coming from Caleb. It's coming from the angel of the Lord, the angel of Jehovah. Who is, this is like an interesting little theology of this little angel right here. The angel, it's not an angel. It's the angel of Jehovah. We haven't spent a lot of time on it, so here's my quick amount of time on the angel of Jehovah. You know who the angel of Jehovah is? God. It's God. This is what we would call a theophany. It's God appearing and all of a sudden in the flesh in the Old Testament. You see the angel the angel of Jehovah, angel of the Lord, only a handful of times throughout the Old Testament and never in the New Testament. And there's a reason for that. All right? So in the Old Testament, you see him right here. And you know why I say he's God? Because he thinks he's God. Now, I will say this. There are a lot of godly men, godly theologians that do not agree with this. But for me, it's like the text just affirms it. And so we don't have to go to other passages, although we easily could. The angel of Jehovah is going to appear later on in this book, actually a couple more times. Judges 6, Judges 13. And every time you're going to see, I'll show you again when we get there, like the angel says he's God. He's claiming to be divine, right? Just look back at verse 1, right? Just incidentally, who's the one who rescued the people of Israel out of Egypt? Answer, God. And so this person is talking in what? First person pronoun. For you grammarians, that's I. So what does he say? And he said to them, I brought you from Egypt, and I brought you into the land that I swore to give your fathers. Who did that? God did that. And I said, I will never break my covenant with you. Who made a covenant with the people at Mount Sinai in Exodus 20? God did. He says, that's me. And you shall make no covenant with the house of Israel, and you shall break down their altars, but you have not obeyed my voice. Right? Who's the one that says, I want you to obey me and walk with me? God did. And incidentally, if that isn't convincing enough in just these verses, he says, what is this that you have done? Does that phrase even sound familiar? Sounds like Genesis. What have you done? So, this is God. God himself showing up. It's a theophany. God appearing. And you see the angel of Jehovah all throughout the Old Testament. You see him actually with Abraham and Hagar. You see him appear actually in Genesis 32 with Jacob. Remember when Jacob is wrestling with someone on a mountain before Esau comes? And he says, I have wrestled with God. I have seen him face to face. Right? You can see the angel of actually Jehovah, even with Moses at the burning bush. You see the angel of Jehovah in the book of Numbers when he stood in the path of Balaam, and so on. You can see him with Joshua. He is the leader of the commander of the host of heaven. So, it's God. It's God. Now, here's another thing I love. So, the angel of Jehovah, God, this theophany appears, and he appears at a place called Gilgal. And for us, it's like, right? We just don't even it means nothing to us. But actually, Gilgal is actually important. You know why Gilgal is important? Gilgal is important because it was a place that the nation understood. Gilgal was the place where the nation renewed their covenant with God from their past failures. In other words, Gilgal was the place where they made a covenant with God saying, I'm going to be faithful to you, and you're going to be faithful to me. It'd be like, for those of us in the room that are married, do you remember where you got married? Yeah. I got married in the Northwestern Chapel in Minneapolis. And there in that chapel, I strongly remember, right? 22 years ago, when I looked at Jen and I made a promise to her. I made a covenant actually with her. And I said, I'm going to be faithful to you. And she made a covenant and promise to me. And she said, I'm going to be faithful to you. And that's what God is saying. At Gilgal, I remember the time where we came together and we gave our vows. I said, I will be faithful to you, and I have shown it. I have been nothing but faithful to you. And you said you're going to be faithful to me, and you haven't been. You've been unfaithful. And what happens, that's why he says, you have not obeyed my voice. What is this that you have done? They've broken it. And I can imagine, to be honest, I can imagine them trying to spin it a little bit. Wait a second. Just like Adam tried to spin it, hey, it's the woman you gave me. And so they could easily try to spin it too. It's like, hey, it's just small things. It's not little things, right? It's just the small things. In fact, we're using it to our advantage. It's not all bad. You can keep telling yourself that. And so what they think is small or tiny, this angel, God's going to tell you, this will destroy you. This is not tall. This is not small. Your infidelity, your unfaithfulness, your willing to not trust me is actually, and not finish what I want you to finish. Like, this is not small. It's not tiny. It will destroy you and the nation around you. Verse 3. So now I say to you, I will not drive out. He's like, God says, I'm not going to drive out the Canaanites before you now. And they're going to become to you thorns in your sides, and their gods will be a snare to you. He's like, these people, now they're going to remain. And they will be a snare. What is, this is not hard. What's a snare? We know what snares are. Snares are traps. You can't see them. They're hidden, but what do? Snares deceive you. Snares catch you. And eventually, what do? They kill you. That's what snares do. And he's like, what you think is a small compromise, what you think is actually an advantageous compromise, it's going to be a cancer to you. And it's going to destroy you. This is absolutely, this is what sets the tone for the rest of the book. Right? Their compromise, their small compromise with sin is going to destroy them. Verse 4, as soon as the angel of the Lord spoke these words to all the people of Israel, the people lifted up their voices and they wept. And they called the name of that place Bokim. And they sacrificed there to the Lord. They wept there. Right? There was great, it says baka is to weep. Like the plural form is bakim. And so this place becomes the place of the weepers. That's what it is. It's just a place of incredible pain and crying. Now here's what is I think helpful. Did they repent? Yeah, they did. They actually confessed, repented, and had a sacrifice for their sins. And is God gracious? Love them and provide forgiveness? Yeah. But the damage is not going to go undone. That's what's scary. He's like, now there's just going to be landmines all throughout the nation. There's going to be snares everywhere. And so these snares are going to be within the country, within the civilization, and it's going to do serious damage. And so, what just happened? God's faithfulness, God's goodness. And yet, they don't finish what they started. They back off. And because of that, they don't drive out the inhabitants. And God hates it. God rebukes them. He rebukes them. And he hates it. You know why he hates it? Because he's like, this is going to hurt you. Isn't that good to see? It's like God is rebuking them, not because he's an angry ogre. God is like a loving grandparent. A loving parent is like, I am rebuking you because I'm trying to spare you pain. You are going to cry because of them. You're going to weep. So, are you compromising right now? And you compromise, he's just like, it's just small. It's a small sin. Or maybe are you compromising in a way where you think that your sin is actually advantageous? It's working for you. I'm telling you, Bokim is coming. It's coming. You'll weep. You'll weep. And so, the rest of this chapter, I got to wrap it up. The rest of this chapter is significant because, their compromise is just going to it's going to explode. Sin goes in small, starts off small, and it comes out wide. And so, this is the country, the nation is just going to crumble. And it's really because of two things that I want to leave you with, and we'll touch on it again. But the old generation that went into the land was a generation that loved God, trusted God. Right? And yet they did two things. They did two things that absolutely changed the spiritual trajectory of the generations that came behind them. for the worse. Here was a generation, loved God, trusted God. They didn't finish what they started, and they're going to cry because of that. But what they did had massive ramifications. And it's just as relevant for us today. Here's what they did. Two things. The first thing, they compromised morally. They compromised, right? And they left landmines all throughout the nation. And so honestly, it's like when you have this generation or these inhabitants that were evil, I can easily see how, well, just let them be. We're not going to adopt their ways. And yet, they compromised. And so here's how I put it. Like, what one generation tolerates, another generation will accept. And what one generation accepts, the next generation will celebrate. And so I'll say that again because, it is true here. It's true for us. And so what one generation tolerates, they're not going to accept it. They're not going to celebrate it, but they do tolerate it. The next generation will accept it. And then that next generation won't just accept it, they'll champion it and they'll celebrate it. And that's what you're seeing. And so that's one thing they did. They compromised morally. The second thing they did is just important. They didn't educate their kids. They failed to teach them the ways of God, to share with them the stories of God's faithfulness and goodness. They failed to teach, pray, read. Right? And you could say they failed to do Sunday school with their family. You see it in verse 10. And all that the generation were gathered to their fathers. And so the generation, they died. And there arose another generation after them who did not know the Lord. They don't know God. And they don't know the work that he did. What did they do? They failed to teach their kids. They didn't share with them. And so a generation now is rising up. They're like, who is this God? And so they don't have their parents' faith. And so you see this over and over. This is what we're going to see in the book of Judges. When you know the truth, and then you know the truth, but you actually just don't follow the truth, like you compromise morally, that's destructive. And when you fail to teach your kids on the faithfulness of God, it is not going to go well. It won't go well. It leads to bokim, a lot of weeping, a lot of pain. I got to wrap her up. I already said it once, so I'm wrapping her up. Verse 11. And the people of Israel did what was evil in the sight of the Lord and served Baals. Right? They're just going to serve the gods that were there now. Because those gods were promoted, propagated, shared. And so they just adopt it. You want a good cross reference? Here's a good cross reference. Psalm 106. Talking about the people. They served the idols which became a snare to them. They sacrificed their sons and daughters to demons. They poured out innocent blood, the blood of their sons and daughters, whom they sacrificed to idols of Canaan. And the land was polluted with blood. That's what happens when you compromise. And that's what happens when you don't teach. And that's why exactly God says you don't want them in the land. If you want the Haugh version of that psalm, it'd be like, if you fail to teach your kids, Satan will gladly do it. So, and the country just implodes. It can't last. It won't last. So, I'm going to wrap. Here's how I want to end. Man, there's so much I want to say. One, bring your kids and family to church. Bring them to church so that we can continue to share the faithfulness and goodness of God. But it's even better than that, though. Grab a family devotional and teach your kids about God and his goodness. Pray with them, talk with them, share with them, share with them. If you don't know how to do it, we'll help you. And that's one of the things, like, we'll help you. Like, how can we help you? We want to actually help us as we raise up the next generation. So don't just come and hear about God's goodness and faithfulness. Do that. But actually come and be a part of what God wants. It's like to raise up the next generation so that they're like, you know what? We're going to be fearless and faith-filled, just like Caleb's. That's what we want. So And you can be a part of that. We need help. We need help downstairs, upstairs, middle schools, high school. I mean, like we need help. So get in the game. Get in the game and be a part of what God's doing. I'm going to pray. Can we actually, I should have said this more than the first service, like we want more of our families to shift to this service. We want to create some space in the first service. Like if we can have 15 families that will just really commit to this service so that we can create more room for the first service, that would be excellent. So I'm going to pray, but we need God's goodness. So Father in heaven, I am so thankful for your word. There's so much here. And so Spirit of God, I pray, one, if there is anyone here, any man or woman who has never trusted Jesus, the Son of God, who came to forgive sin, to give a newness of life, I pray that they would look to Jesus for life and for a righteousness they can't earn. God, save. Direct hearts to you. But God, if there's any man, woman, student who has trusted you, but that is compromising with sin, show them your love, your grace, and pray that they would be quick to confess and turn, knowing, man, there is weeping for the one who will compromise with sin. So, do just that, I pray. And all God's people said, amen.